A man stands in a shop coated in fine silver dust, the rhythmic ringing of hammers echoing off the stone walls, a philosophical clash between the old, established pantheon of Rome and Greece, and the new, disruptive message of a crucified Jewish rabbi. The silversmiths are terrified that if the chant stops, the silence will finally reveal the void. So they keep screaming. They weaponize their panic. They try to drown out the quiet. Devastating truth Paul exposed. A God you have to protect is a God who cannot protect you. Eventually, the city clerk strides into the center of the dust. He raises his arms. He does not use theology to calm the beast. He uses the threat of Roman swords. He reminds the mob that the emperor does not tolerate unauthorized riots. The fear of Rome overrides the fear of the void. The crowd fractures. The chants dissolve into exhausted murmurs. The theater empties out, leaving only echoes and discarded sandals on the hot stone. The physical riot in Ephesus ends. The silversmiths go back to their workshops to count their dwindling coins. But the machine Demetrius built did not stay buried in the first-century Mediterranean dust. Because the economy of zero simply changed its inventory, we do not walk down marble avenues to purchase silver statues anymore. You do not stand in a smoke-filled temple, breathing in the thick scent of roasting meat, to buy spiritual insurance against the unpredictable chaos of the world. But the Ephesian economy did not die when the ancient columns finally collapsed into the dust. It just relocated. But if you look closer at the ledgers kept in the temple treasury, at the frantic, whispered meetings in the guild halls, it moved from the physical architecture of the Roman Empire into the internal architecture of the modern mind. We are still terrified of the void. We still live with the quiet, looming threat that our lives might suddenly unravel, that a sudden medical diagnosis, an unexpected market crash, or a fractured relationship will sweep away everything we have painstakingly built. And so, we manufacture our own leverage. We carefully construct our careers, our online presence, our financial portfolios, and our social circles, polishing them with the exact same frantic energy Demetrius used on his metal. We convince ourselves that if we just acquire enough status, or amass enough wealth, or project enough perfection, we will finally be secure from the dark. The carefully curated life is not a sanctuary. It is a silver shrine. We are still trading our energy, our time, and our deep, exhausted mental bandwidth to purchase the illusion of control. We build an entire phantom economy of self-worth based on metrics that can vanish overnight. And deep down, in the quiet hours of the night, when the emails stop and the screens go dark, we feel the exact same terrifying vulnerability. And at a strange linguistic ghost hiding in the very name of the city itself, you start to see something the religious reading completely misses, that haunted the ancient pagans. We suspect that the things we rely on to hold our identities together might actually be empty. Think about the frantic, exhausting noise of our modern culture. We argue in digital amphitheaters. We defend our tribal identities. We project our voices into the void for hours on end, terrified that if we stop making noise, we will disappear. The cold, blue light of a smartphone, illuminating a face at 2 in the morning, is the modern equivalent of the theater riot. The heavy knot in your chest when your reputation is threatened is the panic of the silversmith realizing his vault is empty. We are still shouting to generate enough volume to compensate for the absolute silence of the things we worship. A God you have to constantly maintain will eventually crush you under the weight of its demands. Paul understood the deep, spiritual exhaustion of the Ephesian machine, and years after, he walked out of that dusty, screaming theater. He sat down in a damp Roman prison cell, his wrist chained to a guard, and he picked up a pen. He wrote a letter back to the believers still trying to survive in the city of the zero. The chaos in Ephesus is not a debate about theology. It is the terror of a collapsing economy. But he did not write to them about Ephes. He wrote to them about the only Greek word massive enough to swallow it completely. A man sits in a Roman holding cell, breathing in the damp, stale air. A heavy iron chain drags across the stone floor every time. He shifts his weight to dip a reed pen into the dark ink. He is older now. His body is carrying the scars of shipwrecks and beatings, but his mind is hundreds of miles away. Back in the city of marble and silver, Paul is writing the letter we now call Ephesians. He knows the believers there are still living in the massive shadow of Artemis. He knows the sheer, crushing weight of the Ephesian zero, the Ephes, constantly threatening to pull them back into anxiety. He knows how tempting it is to buy back into the economy of fear when the rest of the culture is screaming in the theater. So in the very first chapter, Ephesians 1, verse 23, he drops a single word onto the papyrus that shatters the entire silver machine. He writes that the church is Christ's body, the fullness of him who fills everything in every way. The English word translated here is fullness. The Greek word is pleroma. In the ancient Mediterranean, pleroma is not a piece of abstract religious jargon. It is the vocabulary of absolute completion. It is the visceral panic of people who suddenly realize that the thing they have built their entire lives around. It is a mercantile term used by dock workers to describe a cargo ship packed so tightly with grain that there is no space left in the hull. It is a maritime term for a warship whose every single oar is fully manned. It means a sum total, a reality with no gaps, no leaks, and zero empty space. When the Ephesian house churches unroll this letter and hear that word, read aloud in the quiet of a living room, the collision of languages is devastating. Ephes is the total void. Pleroma is the total occupation of that void. The silver shrines of Artemis required you to constantly empty your pockets to purchase a tiny, fragile fraction of peace. But Paul tells them the resurrected king brings a pleroma that floods the entire space, leaving absolutely no room for panic to breathe. This is not just poetic imagery. It is the permanent replacement of their economic reality. When a ship is filled with pleroma, you cannot force another drop of water into the hull. When a human life is filled with the presence of God, you cannot be extorted by the terrifying void of tomorrow. The machine stops working on you. You do not need to buy a silver miniature of a temple when you have literally become the temple. The riot in the theater was fighting over nothing: their security, their status. Their daily bread might actually be a void. The man who triggers this realization does not organize a protest. The letter in the prison cell was delivering everything. But this heavy, ink-stained parchment is not just a piece of ancient history, meant to settle a first-century dispute. Because the collision between the zero and the fullness is about to ask something of you, a prophet spoke into the ancient shadows and exposed the heavy gold idols as a sheer zero. A silversmith polished tiny metal shrines and built a massive, continent-spanning economy out of human panic. A tent maker taught quietly in a rented hall and slowly dismantled the financial fortress of a goddess. A frantic mob screamed for 2 hours in a stone theater and desperately tried to drown out the terrifying silence of the void. A city clerk scattered a dusty riot and sent the exhausted tradesmen back to their empty vaults. An aging prisoner dragged his heavy iron chain and wrote a letter that changed the vocabulary of an empire. A single Greek word flooded a living room in Asia Minor and replaced the terrified nothing with an unshakable fullness. One collision, one reality. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the silver dust on the workshop floor. He does not petition the local magistrates to tear the temple down. He simply sits in a rented lecture hall during the hot, the image of Demetrius, hands calloused, wiping the tarnish off a piece of metal, completely terrified that if he stops hammering, his entire world will collapse. How much of our lives are spent exactly like that, hammering out our own tiny, fragile shrines of security, terrified that if we stop working, stop projecting, stop defending our status, the economy of our lives will crash into the Ephes. If you are in a season where you are spiritually exhausted from protecting a God of your own making, you are not alone. If you are in a season where the phantom economy of your reputation, your finances, or your carefully curated life feels like it is unraveling, Ephesians chapter 1 is a place to breathe. Pleroma, the cargo ship is already full. The warship is completely manned. You do not have to generate the power yourself anymore. The void you are so afraid of has already been occupied by a king who requires no silver. And may the God who fills everything in every way walk into the empty, anxious spaces you have been frantically trying to protect and bring you out, carrying a fullness you could never have purchased on your own. If this opens something up in you, subscribe, leave a comment, even one word helps. Share this with someone who is exhausted from trying to hold their own world together. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. Quiet hours of the afternoon, speaking a reality that slowly cuts the invisible strings, holding the city's wealth together. To understand why a few quiet words could cause an entire empire to violently convulse, you have to look at the machine Demetrius is trying to protect. The machine of Ephesus runs on a very specific, endlessly renewable fuel: anxiety. In the ancient Mediterranean, the world is a fragile, terrifyingly unpredictable place. He holds a tiny, polished idol in his calloused hands, wiping the tarnish away with a cloth. He is not making art. A sudden plague can wipe out a bloodline in a matter of weeks. A late summer drought leaves a farming village starving by winter. A wooden cargo ship carrying a merchant's entire life savings shatters against unseen rocks in a violent Aegean storm. To survive this constant, looming threat of ruin, the ancient mind desperately seeks leverage against the gods. And leverage, in the 1st century, is explicitly purchased at the temple. If you walk through the massive commercial agora of Ephesus, the air is thick with the smell of roasting meat from the continuous temple sacrifices, mingling with the sharp, metallic tang drifting from the smithing quarters. Hundreds of workers sit at wooden benches, casting, hammering, and polishing. They are not merely making souvenirs. They are manufacturing spiritual insurance policies. The Temple of Artemis is not a sanctuary. It is a financial fortress. It operates as the central bank of Asia Minor. Foreign kings deposit their vast treasuries behind its heavy bronze doors because no invading army would dare rob the great goddess. Wealthy merchants, secure, massive, high-interest loans under the unblinking gaze of the multi-breasted idol, the thousands of priests, priestesses, temple guards, and artisans form an entire, self-sustaining ecosystem of wealth. Religion in this city is not a private, spiritual conviction you keep in your heart. It is the inescapable. He is not crafting a memorial. He is manufacturing a god. Outside his open window, the shadow of one of the 7 wonders, economic engine of the state. You pay for the sacrificial animals. You pay the temple tax. You buy the heavy silver shrines from men, like Demetrius, to carry the protective aura of Artemis into your own home, placing the cold metal on your domestic hearth to ward off the darkness. It is a massive, continent-spanning transaction masquerading as salvation, cemented by the undeniable physical grandeur of marble columns that take your breath away when you stand beneath them. It is a brilliant, airtight system. As long as people remain afraid of the chaotic forces of nature, they will keep bringing their gold and silver to exchange for the illusion of control. The entire structure of the city, its political power, its immense wealth, its global reputation depends on everyone agreeing that the statue sitting in the center of that temple holds real, tangible power. It requires a collective, unspoken agreement that the silver objects actually do something to manipulate the heavens. But that massive, impenetrable economy harbors a fatal vulnerability. It only works if no one turns on the lights to show the populace that the vault is actually empty. A man sits in a workshop at dawn, a thick iron needle pushing through heavy, stiff animal hides. His hands are scarred. The sharp, earthy smell of tanned leather fills the small room. This is Paul, of the ancient world stretches across the wide marble streets, the Temple of Artemis. It is a massive structure of cedar and cypress. When the sun reaches its blinding peak and the rest of the city retreats into the shade to sleep, he puts down the needle. He walks across the hot paving stones to the lecture hall of a man named Tyrannus. He stands before a small, sweating crowd. He speaks. He does not organize a militia. He does not draft a petition to the Roman proconsul. He does not march. into the great temple of Artemis to smash the marble altars. He simply dismantles the machine from the inside out. He speaks of a God who made the world and does not live in temples built by human hands. He speaks of a kingdom that cannot be purchased with temple taxes. He tells them that the divine is not served by human hands, as if he needed anything, because he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. A grace that requires no silver, a presence that requires no shrine. At first, nothing happens. A few listen, a few scoff. But then, the ledger numbers begin to dip. A wealthy landowner hears the message and stops bringing his prized bulls to the temple priests. A young mother, previously terrified of the dark, walks past Demetrius's silver stall without stopping. A merchant decides his cargo is safe in the hands of a resurrected Jewish king, supported by 127 towering columns. Gleaming under the sharp Mediterranean sun, pilgrims pour through the city gates by the thousands, not a multi-breasted idol. And he bypasses the temple bank. One by one, day by day, 2 full years pass. The silver begins to tarnish on the display tables. The hammers slow down. The massive temple treasury, the unquestioned center of Asian commerce, feels a slight, chilling draft. The local economy is built on a specific, fragile equation: fear equals profit. Paul introduces a perfect love that casts out fear, and in doing so, he destroys the prophet. The gospel in Ephesus is not a philosophical proposition, it is a financial crisis. Demetrius calls the silversmiths together. You can hear the raw, desperate panic in his voice. Recorded in Acts chapter 19, he does not start with theology. He starts with the bottom line. Men, we receive a good income from this business. And you see and hear how this fellow Paul has convinced and led astray large numbers of people. He says that gods made by human hands are no gods at all. They are losing their grip. And when powerful men lose their grip, they start riots. But there is a detail hiding in plain sight, a linguistic ghost buried in the very history of the text. An irony so deep, it changes how you view the entire conflict. Their sandals scraping against the paving stones. They bring livestock. They bring heavy pouches of foreign coins. They bring deep, unspoken terrors. To see the deep irony of this moment, you have to look through the eyes of a first-century Hebrew-speaking Jewish scholar walking into a Greek metropolis. Paul knows the ancient scriptures intimately. He knows the shape of the dark ink pressed onto thick leather scrolls. He knows the guttural sound the consonants make when read aloud in the quiet of a synagogue. And when he walks down the massive marble avenues of Ephesus, surrounded by thousands of shrines and statues, the very name of the city ringing in his ears sounds exactly like a specific, devastating Hebrew word. In the biblical texts, there is a word for absolute non-existence. The English translations will usually render it as nothing or worthless. The word is the Hebrew ephes. It appears deep in the scrolls of the prophets. Its root carries the meaning of something that ceases, something that fails. A boundary line where reality simply drops off into a void. It is the ancient, linguistic equivalent of a sheer zero. If you unroll the scroll of Isaiah, you find this word weaponized, against the exact same machine Paul is currently facing. In Isaiah chapter 41, verse 24, the prophet records about their crops, their fertility, their fragile futures. And they leave with what this silversmith, Demetrius, holds in his hand, a silver replica, God's booming verdict against the craftsmen who carve idols out of wood and stone. God looks at the dust, manufactured deities, the silver and gold gods that terrified men bow down to. And he says this, "Behold, you are Ephesus, you are nothing, and your work is less than nothing." A few chapters later, in Isaiah 45, God declares his own supreme reality. "I am the Lord, and there is no other." In the original Hebrew, the phrase is Ephes Zulati, literally, a zero besides me. That root changes everything. When Paul, steeped in the fiery language of Isaiah, stands in the shadow of the great temple of Artemis, He is not intimidated by the soaring cedar columns or the massive treasury. He knows what the silver statues actually are. The city is called Ephesus, but to the Hebrew ear, it is the city of Ephes. The great Ephesian economy is not built on cosmic power. It is built on a zero. If seeing the ancient text unmask the world like this is stirring up questions you've never considered, you buy a piece of the goddess. You carry her home. You purchase a quiet mind. Same transaction. Day after day. Year after year. Exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week, we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the silversmiths realize the zero is being exposed. Demetrius cannot let the illusion fail. If the common people realize they have been trading their heavy, hard-earned silver for Ephes, the entire socio-economic structure of the city collapses overnight. He takes his panic out of the workshop and into the streets. He gathers the tradesmen, the craftsmen, the men whose livelihoods depend on the anxiety of the masses, and he lights the fuse of their financial terror. The mob surges forward, moving like a single organism through the streets, grabbing Paul's traveling companions, and they drag the collision of these two worlds into the massive stone amphitheater. 25,000 stone seats carved directly into the western slope of Mount Pion. The marble burns white-hot under the Mediterranean afternoon sun. Dust kicks up in thick, choking clouds as a human flood pours through the vaulted entrance tunnels. The mob drags two men, Gaius and Aristarchus, Paul's traveling companions, by their cloaks, tossing them onto the hard-packed earth of the orchestra. The noise is absolute chaos. Most people read the Book of Acts and assume the riot that is about to tear this ancient metropolis apart is a religious conflict. A jagged, deafening roar, bouncing off the acoustic curves of the stone. Men shove against each other. Fists fly in the periphery. Most of the people packed into the tiers do not even know why they are there. The text records that the assembly is in complete confusion, but panic is contagious. It spreads like a virus through the humid air. A Jewish man named Alexander is violently pushed to the front. He raises his hand to offer a defense. The crowd sees his face. They recognize his heritage. And the mob locks into a single, terrifying rhythm for 2 unbroken hours. The theater shakes. Great is Artemis of the Ephesians. Great is Artemis of the Ephesians. 2 hours. The sun beats down. Sand sticks to sweat. Throats tear. They scream the same 6 words until their voices are nothing but a raw, bleeding rasp. Look at the frantic, sweating mass of humanity in this massive stone bowl. This is not a demonstration of divine power. It is a display of human terror. They are not defending a living God. They are performing CPR on a dead economy. When the God of heaven acts, he speaks in a whisper. He splits a sea. He leaves an empty tomb in the quiet of dawn. But when your God is Ephes, when your entire foundation is built around a heavy, expensive zero, you have to generate the power yourself. The volume of the crowd must compensate for the absolute silence of the idol